Liberty Bay Books in Poulsbo, Washington.
That would have been stuck in probably before any of the events in the first book. Let's just put it that way. Okay. Beatrice Shakespeare Smith returned from a brief trip to the Theatre Illuminata Green Room to find that the fairies had eaten an entire gingerbread house. Not one of the elaborate constructions that Mr. Hastings had stowed away in the properties department for the party scene from the Nutcracker, but a full-size cottage, complete with poured sugar window panes, candy cane rafters, lemon-glazed cookie shingles, and licorice gutters. Only the jawbreaker doorknob remained, which Mustard Seed was trying to cram into his gaping sticky pie hole, while the other two boys kicked him in the seat of the pants. "We claimed the doorknob when you ate the chocolate door knocker. Give it over, you pig." "I won't," was his response, somewhat muffled, Bertie thought, by his nearly dislocated jaw. The entire tableau reminded her strongly of a jungle snake unhinging its jaw to swallow a beach ball, while two irate leprechauns hopped and screeched threats and fuel-sugared insults. Only Peas Blossom maintained a precarious decorum, sitting atop an upturned water pail and delicately licking a gum-paste daffodil. "I was only gone for 5 minutes, Bertie said, with a furtive look toward the stage manager's corner. "Only long enough to get a coffee and leave a note on the call board for Nate. How in the name of the three wise monkeys did you four manage to eat an entire house in that amount of time?" "We're overachievers," Moth suggested, in between vicious kicks to Mustard Seed's posterior. "I hate to cast aspersions," Cobweb said, "but you were the one dumb enough to call in the set from Hansel and Gretel and then leave us here unattended." "You have me there," Bertie muttered, "and Mr. Tibbs will have my head in a noose when he sees what you four have done." "I tried to stop them," Peas Blossom said before her conscience got the better of her, and she added, "for a full minute at least." "Longest 60 seconds of my life," Moth said, sharing a disgusted look with Cobweb. The two of them squinted at Mustard Seed, and before Bertie could stop them, they switched tactics and forced the jawbreaker down their comrade's gullet. With a terrible gulp, Mustard Seed swallowed the enormous candy ball, which settled in his midsection like the padding on a very jolly Santa Claus. "I told you I could manage it in one bite," he said with a smirk and a burp that jiggled his distended belly like a bowl full of jelly beans. "You fatten up well enough," Moth said with disgust. "If I didn't mind toe jam and belly button lint, we could eat you for dinner." "I'm a delicacy in 12 countries, Mustard Seed retorted. Fairly certain they wouldn't resort to immediate cannibalism, Bertie ran to the stage manager's corner and lifted his headset to her lips. "Cue the patisserie set." Behind her, the fairies yelped as the curtain swept away the few remaining crumbs of the gingerbread cottage, and the walls and chairs and tables of a French bakery landed on the stage with a series of gentle thumps. "Yeah," Cobweb yelled, "I'm going to eat all the eclairs." Bertie snagged him by the seat of the pants. "No, you are not." "Why'd you call the bakery in then?" Moth wanted to know. "How do you think you'll look in an apron?" Bertie asked. Moth paled. Well, why would I need an apron?" Grabbing the other three with one deft swipe of her hand, Bertie ducked behind the counter and walked through the swinging glass doors on the back wall. Underfoot, unseen bits of machinery rumbled to life, and the set began to pivot on a giant turntable. The lights blazed to full, gleaming off countless copper pots, silver measuring spoons, an enormous stone hearth, and ovens burning bright with coals. Loaves of gently steaming bread sat on marble countertops. Row upon row of empty pastry shells waited for custard and berries. Bertie located a pile of freshly washed aprons, and she unfurled lengths of blue and white striped fabric with the snap of a pirate flag in the wind. "I am not wearing this," Cobweb said, flinging a tiny ruffled cap on the stone floor. Bertie took a single menacing step toward him, making all necessary threats with her eyes. Cobweb hastened to don his baking apparel without further protest, tying double knots in his strings and jerking his cap so far over his eyes that surely he couldn't see a thing. The others followed his example, though Mustard Seed could barely fit his apron over his massive gut. "Tell me it is what we're doing again?" he demanded. "She didn't even tell us once, stupid," Moss said through the lace on his cap, "so she can't very well tell us again now, can she?" "You four ate that house," Bertie said, putting on her own chef's hat with grim determination, "so you're jolly well going to bake a replacement one before Mr. Tibbs finds out what you've done." Cobweb knew better than to argue, but the first thing he did was make a trail of breadcrumbs on the floor, marking the way to the apple tarts. And then the fairies set to work, rubbing butter into flour and measuring spices. By the time Nate arrived on the set, the boys were sliding massive slabs of gingerbread into the ovens, and Peas Blossom stirred a vat of boiling sugar like one of the witches in That Scottish Play, but with less cackling and more creative cursing every time a fleck of the devilish hot stuff landed on her arms. Nate paused in the doorway, earring glinting in the spotlight, smile both bemused and concerned. "What are you doing? This is a new sort of mess you're making." Mustard Seed took offense. "It isn't a mess, it's magic. Don't you know alchemy when you see it?" Nate's gaze traveled over the fairies wearing more flour than clothes. "Well, it looks like a mess to me." He shifted his attention to Bertie, like you were on the losing side of a food fight. Close. Keenly aware that she was up to her elbows in butter and probably had chocolate on the end of her nose, Bertie tried to concentrate on fudge instead of the pirate towering over her. They ate the gingerbread set. "The one Mr. Tibbs just finished?" Nate successfully turned a laugh into a cough, but only just. "I thought he'd have it under strict watch." "Not strict enough!" cried the four triumphant and not all abashed fairies. Turning up the sleeves on his shirt, Nate smiled at Bertie. "What do you need me to do?" "Taste this," she said, offering him a spoon, "and keep a wary lookout for the stage manager." He took the spoon but didn't so much glance over his shoulder. Well, you needn't worry about that." "About the fudge?" "About the stage manager. I saw him headed toward the theater manager's office, full steam ahead, and I knew you must have done something, so Nate cleared his throat of a suspiciously guilty-sounding tickle. "I might have bumped him into the broom closet." Bertie knew her mouth was hanging wide enough open to fit a 6-layer cake, but didn't care. "You locked him in the closet. You knocked him into the closet and locked the door," Nate admitted. Fairies whooped through mouths of caramel like the witch tossed in the oven, save he weren't wearing a great flappy cloak, and I never heard a witch curse like that. The oven timer went off with a great clackety-clang, and Nate sat down the wooden spoon and took up pot holders. Within minutes, every surface of the kitchen was stacked with enormous cooking sheets holding steaming gingerbread. "They have to cool before we decorate them," Bertie said, feeling the sweat trickle down the small of her back. "There's no way we can wait that long without someone catching us." Nate's cheeks were ruddy with heat and exertion. "You're right about that. The frosting would slide right off." Before he finished the sentence, though, a cool wind eased its way through the kitchen, ruffling the edges of their aprons, bringing with it the scent of Arctic snow-tinged winters. Though Bertie peered into the dark space above the stage and could see nothing save scenery and rigging, she knew Ariel was somewhere nearby. As the temperature dropped around them, she could do no more than smile at the well-timed gift. "You notice he didn't stick around to do any of the heavy lifting," was Nate's only comment. "Lucky," Mustard Seed muttered, but it wasn't the end of the complaints. They complained about the cold. They complained about Bertie's decree that they eat nothing else, about the fact that she caught them every time that they were about to lick their fingers and stick them back into the bowl. It took another hour, a vat of royal icing, and approximately 1,000 pounds of candy conveniently purloined from the chocolate factory set in the scenic department, though Mr. Hastings was still maintaining it belonged to the properties department and would hopefully help them replace it. But the group finally stuck the last lemon glazed shingle into place and collapsed on the stage with sighs of relief. "For goodness sake, send it away before they eat it again," Bertie finally muttered to Nate. With a groan, he rolled over and headed toward the headset. The newly rebuilt cottage disappeared into the flies alongside the bits of the patisserie set, so the only thing the stage manager found upon his arrival with the theater manager a few seconds later was Bertie and her cohorts, faces innocent if suspiciously sticky. They were making a proper mess," the stage manager sputtered, "up to their elbows in eggs." "If that were true," Mustard Seed said, hiding his jawbreaker pregnant belly by sitting crisscross applesauce and leaning as far forward as he could, "it also smelled bacon." He punctuated the statement with a burp that reverberated in the rafters. "Then the pirate locked me in the broom closet on purpose." Come, do you see any of the pirates on stage now? None of them have been called here." The theater manager gave Bertie a stern look, the sort that said, "I know you've been up to something, but I've no time to deal with your shenanigans right now," before he guided the stage manager out the stage door with comforting words of, "Come along, old chap, a tot of whiskey will do you wonders." Nate re-entered the scene when he was certain they were gone. "I guess the real question is, did you get enough sweets for once in your lives?" "You'd think that, wouldn't you?" Peas Blossom said with a tinkling laugh. "But the last one to the green room is a chocolate door knocker."
Great.